NineTen, NineTen, NineTen in the morning.
Yeah. Yo, what's up, 910? I got Jeff Moores on the podcast this week. Good buddy of mine, Jeff. We go way back.
Way back.
Like 5 years ago.
When you got hired.
Yeah. When I came on, you were, I think, deep into your tenure at the Jordan.
Yeah.
Came down from Washington, right?
I did, yeah. In 2011, moved down. Yeah.
Okay. Are you from up in Washington originally?
No, originally San Diego, East County, like El Cajon, La Mesa. And then I moved up there when I was 10 and lived up there until, 32? Came down, yeah.
32. Yeah, I just turned 30 like 3 weeks ago. So
yeah,
it's weird thinking about a career change.
Right.
Like in the next 2 years.
That's imagine picking up and moving your entire family.
Yeah, you had
states.
3 kids at the time?
3 kids at the time, yeah.
Wow, now you have the 6. That's nuts. No, I'm just kidding. Still three.
Still 3.
All of them, I'm pretty sure. Well, actually, I don't think I have Israel up there, but got the other 2. But
left too young.
And you, how long were you at North Coast Church?
I think I was here 8 years.
Okay.
8, yeah, like 8.5 years.
Dang. So talk to me through I always, as a missionary kid, right, I bounced around a ton, moved a lot. Yeah. What was the move like at 10 from San Diego to Washington? Were you excited? Were you bummed?
Well, I was stoked. My mom was a drug addict, got clean and sober. And my grandma had been flying me up to Washington every summer.
Okay.
So you go from East County, which is like brown, nasty. I lived in ghetto apartments. You know, like you ride down to the liquor store to buy some now and laters and you get robbed on the way back type thing.
Nice.
So I'd go up to like Washington. It was beautiful. You know, Washington in the summer is amazing.
Oh,
it's green. It's sunny. Like if it does rain, it's kind of cool. And so I thought it was like that year round. So my mom got clean and sober, said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "Washington. Grandma's up there. People live in homes."
Right.
You know, like no one's trying to rob you. Let's go there.
Yeah.
And it went up there and it started raining and it didn't stop until we moved. It was horrible. It was the worst decision of my life. Actually, no, because I met my wife up there. And stuff,
yeah.
so.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Redeeming factor for sure. But you stayed for a long time though. You were up there for 20 years.
Yeah, I was supposed to. My goal was to graduate college up there and then move down here and start teaching history.
Okay.
But my senior year of college, I got called into ministry. The Lord showed up to me one night, basically at a prayer and worship service. And I got a vision, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Life changed. Stayed up there and did ministry for about 10 years. Saw a youth ministry of about 7 kids that I absolutely hated. I don't know if you've ever experienced that.
All 7
of them, dude. Yeah. It was the most brutal thing in the world. But eventually it grew into a few hundred, and we saw pretty much like a youth revival take place. And so I stuck in there for that. Yeah.
Dang. How long did it take for it to be not just those 7 kids?
Well, I quickly grew it to about 30 because I was, young and cool. I was like 22 at the time, athletic. And so we had about, 20 to 30 junior high boys showing up. And then I started to try to figure out how to teach. And so then I grew it down to about 12.
Yeah, nice.
And then from there, it just slowly built over time.
Wow. That's cool. Dang. And then moving down here, how old were your kids when you moved to San Diego?
Ooh, shoot. India was, I think 8, 6, and 4.
Dang, yeah. That's a big move.
It's a big move at that time. Yeah,
it's huge. Wow. Yeah. And then what was the Jordan when you took over? Was it like 150-ish?
About
100?
60 to 80.
60 to 80. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Golly.
Yeah.
And then it was like what, 400 or 500 when you?
Yeah, anywhere between 500 to sometimes we'd have nights over 6.
Golly.
Yeah.
That's back-to-back stories where you went 7 to a couple hundred and then 60, 80 to 500. What do you attribute that to? Obviously you're a pastor, so you go the Lord was involved.
God's grace.
Yeah. We were preaching the gospel, which is true, right?
Totally true.
Obviously true.
Yeah.
I'm saying it tongue in cheek, but there's also plenty of people that preach the gospel that don't see any growth and don't see any change there. So what was the secret sauce there?
So of course, dependence upon the Lord, all of that, but also I was just really intentional to build community, and I think that just became incredibly attractional. And building team was another. I'm not very good at anything.
Come on.
I'm dead serious. I'm not good.
You're good at dressing
that
cool.
much. I try. I try. There are maybe a few things, but for the most part, I'm not good at anything. So I always had to have people around me that were better than me, or better than me at certain things. And so I've always been able to build those teams. and give people purpose and like kind of activate things in people. And coming here, there was all the right ingredients. You had Andrew Pulfer leading worship. He just needed to be released to do so. You had people like James and Kaylee, all these kind of like all the ingredients were here. And so it was just kind of like putting it all together and then kind of letting it roll. But it really is, it's all about massive intentionality. And I am I'm a perfectionist, and I pay attention to detail, and I'm about excellence, and I'm incredibly driven, and my mind never shuts off. And so there's probably a lot of unhealth in that. And I always want to prove myself because in my mind, I'm always the poor kid from El Cajon. So I was actually, we might get into it later, but I was getting ready to church plant, and a guy like said, he was talking to different networks that give you money, because when you church plant, you need money. And one of the guys was like, so what really motivates you? And I was like, honestly, Jesus, all this different stuff. I go, but if we're being like real, a lot of times I'm motivated by insecurity and being the poor kid.
Yeah. Golly. It's as real as it gets. It's as real as it gets.
I'm sweating up in here now.
I know. It's well, the sad thing about North Coast Church is like nobody knows who controls whose thermostats.
Right.
So you just kind of play with somebody else's thermostat and hope the AC kicks on in your office, but it's like an algorithm. Yeah. It's like I think Larry office controls Brown's, which controls.
I remember. I remember
having.
Yeah, Dave Inns was always like had his office freezing.
Right.
So it'd be summertime here, and I'd be like in bundled coats. And it's horrible.
Classic. Well, okay. Since you brought it up, I want to jump into it because I think there's some of that in me too, right? Like I was the missionary kid, and I remember going to
having to prove yourself at every spot you move to.
Oh yeah, man. Like, and it's both sides for me. Like one side of it was I'm the youngest of 4. All my siblings were freaking awesome and like married rock stars and are super successful in their own fields. So it's like cool. And so there was like the prove yourself on that side of things, but there was also a little bit of the, like when I graduated high school, I went to Biola to study. At first I was like, I'm gonna be a doctor. Sure. And then I'm like, wait, you have to go to school how long?
Yeah, no.
I'm out.
Done.
So then it was business because I wanted to make a lot of money. I was like, I don't want to say no to my kids for anything. And like I had an incredible childhood, but I just remember there being like particularly things that we, couldn't say yes to, or family vacations that were done differently. And so I just remember in my ignorant 18-year-old mind being like, I'm going to make a lot of money somewhere. So it was like proving myself there. And then now I feel like it's the other side of things of, living up to the hype of Phil Payne, which is a lot of hype. And so to me, it's a positive pressure. It's like kind of that to those who have been given much as expected pressure.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's interesting to talk about that. Like, what are the things that motivate you? And it's sometimes I think as Christians, we try to write that off entirely of like, oh no, it should just be the purity of the gospel, which in an ideal world, yes. Oh, yeah. But there's also what are the things that you can take that are gross and nasty and prideful and insecure, but there's also a positive spin to that, right? There's a shadow side. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that kind of, this whole month we've been talking about kind of the whole concept of a great captain has never been forged by smooth seas, right? Like calm sailing. It's not like, let me tell you about this one time. Smoothest seas I ever saw. It's always the storm, and it's the crap that we go through. So as you look back, you already mentioned it a little bit, but mom is a drug addict. Yep. You haven't mentioned your dad yet, so I'm assuming.
Dad came in to rescue me, but he had a lot of mental health issues and was verbally abusive, and so I lived in a very volatile. Like my childhood was just volatile. Yeah, it didn't matter if I was with my mom or with my dad. Like you didn't know which dad you were going to get sometimes, and I actually, I have great relationships with both of them today. Absolutely love them. My mom, who prayed me into the kingdom, basically. My dad was, like one of my best friends for a long time. And so I don't really hold a lot of grudges. My therapist actually says that I make too many excuses for people in my life. But I just I don't really see any reason to. Yeah. But it was those environments that made me hyper aware of things. I don't know if I developed it because of this or that's just who I am, but like I'm anxious. I'm OCD. I'm ADD or ADHD or whatever it is. And so, but that helps me in ministry. Like I've learned how to flip those into superpowers.
That's awesome. Yeah, the redeeming factors of ADHD is like, I'm fun. I'm a good time.
I'm a good time. I notice everything. I notice that you're kind of bored over there in the corner right now. Like I notice these things, like
JoJo never gets bored. JoJo loves to sit over here.
I can tell. Yeah. So like, you notice all these things and then being OCD, wanting things in their place and for stuff to flow. Like it makes you a master of atmospheres.
Yeah. Dang. As you look back over the last, like, I mean, we could do your whole life, but let me just give me the last like couple years that we've walked through, right? Like, not to mention big transitions out of North Coast, out of a very stable career that you've been in for a long time, into like, man, plunge into the deep end of church planting, which anybody I've ever talked to is like gnarliest years of my life, right?
Right.
You got high school girls, right? Now a college girl, and is freshman, sophomore?
Yeah, he's going into a sophomore year.
Golly, dude.
I know, he just turned 16.
Honestly, COVID just messed up my calendar for all humans. I don't know how old anybody is anymore.
No.
I'm like, you're in 6th grade, right? They're like, I'm a senior.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, puberty hit me late too. It's fine. But talk to me about those last couple of years as you talk about the stormy seas forming your life and forging you. Like, what has that been like?
Honestly, it's hard. I actually came to a point not too long ago where I had to admit to myself that I was tired. Leaving North Coast, understanding it is a call of God, having it confirmed by multiple people, still having such great relationship with the church, people thinking I'm nuts, I think I'm nuts, to leave this, to go into an unknown, to spend the time, the energy, the effort to start the church, and things were going incredibly well. But we started January 2020, so we met for 8 weeks and then had to shut down. And so there's a major faith factor of, God, you have this, because like I'm a bit of as I display all of my issues, I'm also a control freak, right? So I can't control anything.
Yeah.
There's I have to, who's watching online, like who's like, what's going on. And so going through that, it really kind of helped me let go of the church a little bit and understand that this isn't, actually I wear this, each bracelet has a meaning, right? I don't just wear bracelets because it's cool.
I mean, double factor, right? Like,
exactly.
Double entendre.
Yeah, exactly. So like I pray each time I put one on, but this one is God's got this. And so that's like every Sunday morning I put it on. God's got this. It's God's church. God's got, even as I'm coming here tonight, God's got this. So it was one of those things of like, I can't, there's no control. I have to just completely relinquish it to the Lord. And then coming back and we go back, we're inside, then we have to go outside, and the constant pivoting. And then understanding there's people at my church that aren't going to be with us long term because we're a stopover until their church opens back up. And I'm like, okay, so who do I get close to? Who do we invest in? And really, we should invest in everybody and get close to everybody.
Right.
But really, there's a strategic part of me that's like, if you're here for 3 months and they're here for 30 years, love you, but I'm gonna hang out with them instead. So there was a real like not knowing. So it got to a place to where I became a reactionary leader instead of a visionary leader. And I've always been a visionary leader. I lead out of vision. I don't lead based on what's kind of happening around me, but that's what I had to do for a while, right? And I was finding myself tired, unhappy, unhealthy. And it took a prayer retreat with a good buddy of mine. And he said, man, it sounds like you're just kind of more, you're like, he's like, what's your vision right now? I said, I don't know. He goes, yeah, it sounds like you're just kind of leading out of reaction now. And so it forced me for the first time to A, realize that, but B, make a intentional transition back into vision. Back into, all right, Lord, like, where it's always come easy for me, God, I'm going to, like lay it out, and Jesus, we have to work together on this because it's not coming to me like this anymore.
Yeah. What's the balance? God's got this, right? Like, what's the balance there? Because as a church planter, somebody who's out there, like, you also have to have a lot of things, right? Like, you got to work your tail off to make stuff happen. And I've always like loved the proverb, like, we prepare the horse for battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. Because it just is, it's such a good picture for me of like that war horse of like, I'm putting the saddle on, I'm cinching it just right. I got the blanket on, I got the horse all prepped, I got the horseshoes going, like my gun's there, like everything's dialed. And then I'm like, all right, now God's got this.
Right.
Because I don't know, growing up in ministry, it's just way too
Sure.
many cheesy times where it's just like, God's got this. And I'm like, yeah, but you're lazy.
Yeah,
Like, you're
no,
not
exactly.
doing
Yeah.
anything.
No.
What's the balance there? Like, how have you seen that play out firsthand?
Firsthand, early in ministry was kind of that way. It's like, man, all we got to do is just pray, and God'll do it. And then it was like, no, you got to pray, you got to preach, you got to lead, you got to install systems.
Right.
The only revivals that have ever been sustained are ones that had systems in place to help us sustain. And so, getting to that, God's got this, but He's also called me to do a job within it. And I have to trust Him. So, I think it's 1 Corinthians 2. I should know this. I'm a pastor, but
Just say it confidently.
yeah,
They're not gonna know.
1 Corinthians chapter 2.
Paul's
Paul's
my mom. She might know. She might call you out. She's gonna text you.
She's gonna write an email.
Yeah.
This was really bad. Paul says, like, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gives the increase. And so it's doing what I've been told to do by God and then trusting Him for the results. And that's really what it comes down to. All right, Lord, you said to do this. You've gifted me to do this. So I have to trust you for the outcome. Otherwise, I'm going to manufacture it. And it'll be made by man instead of the Spirit.
Yeah. Dang. Okay. Kind of a shift in conversation, but a hot topic of like self-care. And I'm curious, like with what you've already talked about, like the ADHD, the OCD, the anxiety.
Yeah.
You're like, I've always looked at you as somebody who's been like such a good dad. Like you're such a good dad. You're such a good husband.
Yeah.
But you also like work your butt off and
Yeah.
like you see these results and like you go down to rhythm and you're like, dude, this place is freaking awesome. And seeing like the staff that you have around and the crew that you have around. And like, there's a part of me too that like, I kind of love, I look at the rhythm and I always hope to be, this is kind of like a vulnerable moment here. Like, I never want to be that like stereotype. Like if somebody guesses I'm a youth pastor, I'm super bummed. They're like, "Oh, are you a youth pastor?" I'm like, "Frick me!" I try hard, you know. And so it was fun for me hanging out with your crew and seeing the guys around there that are just like tatted up, like classic Oceanside guys. They're like, "Yeah, I'm a pastor." I'm like, "Yes." Score more. Like we're just trying to get away from the soul patch acoustic guitar playing. You know what I mean? So
faux hawk.
But I've loved that about you of like, you're not your stereotypical pastor and yet like you grind and work hard, but are such a family man.
Yeah.
How do you balance those things out? Because it's usually one way or the other. It's like this guy loves his family, but his ministry kind of sucks.
Right.
Or it's like this guy's grinding, but his family never sees him. Yeah. And I feel like you're somebody who's been a pastor for a long time. You've been at this, and you've raised
20 years,
3 kids, right?
Yeah.
And one of them's out of your house. 2 of them you're still going, but long established.
Man, I think I like my family, like love my family. And so it's never a hard thing to really want to hang out and spend time with them. And then I think also too, like understanding life is seasons. And so taking advantage of the seasons when we have time to hang and we have like when ministry does slow down a little bit has been major, especially major for my wife and I, because she doesn't expect stuff from me in difficult seasons. Like, she knows I'll be a little bit aloof. She knows I'm going to be a little bit more focused here and there. But then, so the season that I'm not, I'm really kind of turning on, but it's also then too, like, man, learning to steal moments, like to, depending upon what church you work at, like, but I know here you have a very open schedule, so for a lot of times for my kids, it was like hanging out with them, then they go to bed and then I go back to work. It's just being incredibly intentional about, taking advantage of those moments. But honestly, man, and if I could speak to, if any other pastors or young pastors out there listen, there are moments though I look back at, I was just talking with Andy Wood, the guy that just took over Saddleback, and he sees like he put words to it, and I was like, yep. I look back on pictures of my kids and I'm there, but I'm not. So I'm present and I'm involved, but a lot of times my mind was elsewhere. And so like, that is kind of a little bit of a regret I have, is that these moments go by so fast. And so I'm trying to be even more intentional now, as they're like, one's 17 going on 18, and one's already out of the house, of just like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm just not present, but I'm present.
Yeah. We need more TikTok dances is what we need.
We do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to become TikTok famous. If the whole pastor thing doesn't work out, then at least if you're out there, I expect 14 more followers
Yeah.
on TikTok.
At Tuesday Dances with Isla. Whatever your handle is.
TikTok Tuesday. We
Yeah,
haven't
there
done
we
one
go.
for a long time.
There we go. It's so
Oh,
good.
Lord.
That I always look forward to those. I felt like those were those started over COVID,
They started
right?
over COVID, dude.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is fire. Let's go. Let's go. That's awesome.
We'll do another.
As we close here, like I think you spoke to it really well as a pastor, as a family man. What would you say to like just anybody who's trying to find that life work balance of like, man, I want to stay healthy, but I also want to be somebody that works hard. How do you find that balance?
Right now we're living in the age where hustle is sexy. Like you're hustling, bro. You're just going for it. You're building it. And I think that if you can do that and maintain relationships, do it. If you can't, relationships are far more important. And so take good care of your wife, take good care of your kids, take good care of your husband, so on and so forth. But relationships are key. Because all this stuff we can't take with us. Nobody cares that you were a CEO when you're in heaven. It's not like they're like, you were what? You did. you had 3 Teslas? Oh my gosh. Like, no one
How many
cares.
side hustles did you have?
Yeah, I know exactly. You built what business?
Yeah.
Like
that's good.
So
let that be your gauge for health. Is how are your relationships?
how are my relationships?
That's so cool. That's such a simple question to break down a complex answer, right? It's like, well, how do I know if I'm healthy? How are your relationships? Look around you.
Yeah.
How are those? That's good.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, as always, thanks for chatting.
For sure.
Thanks for being on, taking the time, coming in here into this sweat box.
The sauna.
Right? You lost like 5 pounds before you taught tonight.
I need to lose those, dude. My dad bod is in full effect.
Yeah, there we go. All right, NineTen, we'll catch you next time.
Peace.